Chapter 15. A Night at the Ritz. When the desk clerk at the Ritz Hotel saw the boatman enter the lobby, followed by an enormous snow-white swan with a black beak, the clerk didn't like it at all. The clerk was a carefully dressed man, very neat, his hair nicely combed. The boatman stepped boldly up to the desk. "I'd like a single room for tonight for my friend here," said the boatman. The clerk shook his head. "No birds," he said. "The Ritz doesn't take birds." "You take celebrities, don't you?" asked the boatman. "Certainly," replied the clerk. "You'd take Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor, wouldn't you, if they wanted to spend the night?" "Of course," replied the clerk. "You'd take Queen Elizabeth, wouldn't you?" "Of course." "Okay," said the boatman. "My friend here is a celebrity. He is a famous musician. He created a sensation in the public garden this afternoon. You must have heard the commotion. He's a trumpeter, Swan, and plays like the great Armstrong." The clerk gazed suspiciously at Lewis. "Has he any luggage?" asked the clerk. "Luggage?" cried the boatman. "Take a look at him. Look at the stuff he's got with him." "Well, I don't know," said the clerk, staring at Lewis's possessions. "His trumpet, his money bag, his slate, his chalk pencil, his life-saving medal. A bird is a bird. How do I know he hasn't got lice? Birds often have lice. The Ritz won't take anybody that has lice." "Lice!" roared the boatman. "Did you ever see a cleaner guest in your whole life? Look at him. He's immaculate." At this, Lewis held up his slate to the clerk. "No lice," he wrote. The clerk stared in amazement. He was beginning to weaken. "Well, I have to be careful," he said to the boatman. "You say he's a celebrity. How do I know he's famous?" "You may be just kidding me about that." Just then, 3 young girls entered the lobby. They were giggling and squealing. One of them pointed at Lewis. "There he is," she screamed. "There he is. I'll get his autograph." The girls rushed up to Lewis. The first girl held out a pad and pencil. "May I have your autograph?" she asked. Lewis took the pencil. Very gracefully he wrote "Lewis" on the pad. More squeals, more giggles, and the girls rushed away. The clerk watched in silence. "There," said the boatman. "Is he a celebrity or isn't he?" The clerk hesitated. He was beginning to think he would have to give Lewis a room. At this point, Lewis had an idea. He lifted his trumpet and began to play an old song called "There's a Small Hotel." "There's a small hotel with a wishing well." His tone was beautiful. Guests passing through the lobby paused to listen. The clerk leaned his elbows on the desk and listened attentively. The man behind the newsstand looked up and listened. People sitting upstairs in the lounge put down their cocktails and listened. The bellboys stared and listened. For a few minutes, everything stopped in the lobby while Lewis played. He charmed everyone who could hear. Chambermaids in the bedrooms paused in their work to listen to the trumpet. It was a moment of sheer magic. As the song came to an end, people who knew the words sang them softly. "When the steeple bell says good night, sleep well. We'll thank the small hotel together." "How about that?" asked the boatman, grinning at the clerk. "Is this Swan a musician or isn't he?" "He plays a sweet trumpet," the clerk said. "But there is one more question that I hesitate to bring up. What about his personal habits? Will he mess the room all up? Actors are bad enough. Musicians are worse. I can't allow a large bird to occupy one of our beds. It might put us out of business. Other guests might complain." "I sleep in the bathtub," Lewis wrote on his slate. "Will not disturb bed." The clerk shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "Who's going to pay the bill?" he asked. "I am," replied the boatman. "I'll be here early tomorrow morning when Lewis checks out." The clerk couldn't think of any more reasons for not letting the Swan have a room. "Very well," he said. "Sign the register, please." He handed Louis a pen and a card. Louis wrote, Louis the Swan, Upper Red Rock Lake, Montana. The clerk studied it. He seemed satisfied at last. He summoned a bellboy and handed him a key. Take this gentleman to his room, he ordered. Louis removed his medal, his trumpet, his slate, his chalk pencil, and his money bag, and handed them to the bellboy. Together they walked to the elevators. The boatman said goodbye. Sleep well, Louis, called the boatman, and be ready to come to work promptly in the morning. Louis nodded. The elevator door opened. This way, sir, said the bellboy. They entered the elevator and waited for the door to close. A rich smell of perfume filled the air. Louis stood very still. Then he felt himself rising. The elevator stopped at the 7th floor, and the bellboy led Louis to a room, unlocked the door, and ushered him in. Here you are, sir, he said. Would you like a window open? The bellboy put Louis's luggage down, snapped on a few lights, opened a window, and laid the room key on the dresser. Then he waited. I guess he wants a tip, thought Louis. So he went to his money bag, loosened the drawstring, and took out $1. Thank you very much, sir, said the bellboy, taking the $1. He went out and closed the door softly behind him. Louis was alone at last, alone in a room at the Ritz. Louis had never spent a night alone in a hotel. First he walked round and around, switching lights on and off, examining everything. In the writing desk he found a few sheets of letter paper that said, Ritz-Carlton, Boston. He felt mussy and dirty, so he went into the bathroom, climbed into the tub, pulled the shower curtain across, and took a shower bath. It felt good and reminded him of the water fights he used to have with his brothers and sisters. He was careful not to splash any water out of the tub. When he was finished, he stood for a while, admiring the bath mat and preening his feathers. Then he felt hungry. On the wall of the bedroom he found a button that said, Waiter. Louis put his beak against the button and pressed hard. In a few minutes there was a knock at the door, and a waiter entered. He was nicely dressed and tried not to show surprise at finding a Swan in the room. May I get you something? He asked. Louis picked up his chalk pencil. 12 watercress sandwiches, please, he wrote on the slate. The waiter thought for a moment. Are you expecting guests? He asked. Louis shook his head. And you want 12 watercress sandwiches? Louis nodded. Very good, sir, said the waiter. Do you wish them with mayonnaise? Louis didn't know what mayonnaise tasted like, but he thought fast. He cleaned his slate and wrote, 1 with, 11 without. The waiter bowed and left the room. Half an hour later he was back. He rolled the table into the room, placed a huge platter of watercress sandwiches on it, along with a plate, a knife, a fork, a spoon, salt and pepper, a glass of water, and a linen napkin nicely folded. There was also a butter dish with several pieces of butter covered with cracked ice. The waiter arranged everything carefully, then handed Louis a bill to sign. The bill said, 12 watercress sandwiches, $18. Goodness, thought Louis, this is an expensive place. I hope the boatman won't be mad when he sees this supper charge on the bill tomorrow morning. He borrowed a pencil from the waiter and signed the bill. Louis the Swan. The waiter took the bill and stood there, waiting. I guess he wants a tip, thought Louis. So he opened his money bag again, drew out $2 and handed it to the waiter, who thanked him, bowed again, and went away. Because a swan has such a long neck, the table was just the right height for Louis. He didn't need a chair. He ate his supper standing up. He tried the sandwich that had mayonnaise on it and decided he didn't like mayonnaise. Then he carefully pulled each sandwich apart. All he really wanted was the watercress. He piled the slices of bread in 2 neat piles, scooped the watercress onto his plate, and had a nice supper. He did not touch the butter. When he was thirsty, instead of drinking from the glass of water, He walked into the bathroom, drew a basinful of cold water, and drank that. Then he took his napkin, wiped his beak, and pushed the table out of the way. He felt much better. To be all alone in a hotel room gives a person a cozy feeling and a feeling of importance. Louis felt great, but soon he began feeling rather lonely too. He thought of Sam Beaver. He thought of Camp Kookooskoos. He thought of his father and mother and sisters and brothers back home in Montana. He thought of Serena, the swan he loved, and wondered how she was. The words of the song he had played in the lobby came back to him. There's a small hotel with a wishing well. I wish that we were there together. How wonderful it would be, he thought, if Serena could be here at the Ritz to enjoy the hotel with him. The waiter had left an evening paper on a table. Louis glanced at the front page. To his amazement, he saw a picture of himself on the lake in the public garden with the Swan boat. A big headline said, "Boston goes wild over the Trumpet of the Swan." The news story began. There's a new bird in town. His name is Louis. He is a trumpeter swan that really plays the trumpet. Incredible though it may seem, this rare and beautiful water bird has accepted employment with the Swan boat management in the public garden and is entertaining boat riders with his smooth trumpet. Crowds gathered at the lake this afternoon after his arrival, and the sweet notes of his horn were heard in many parts of Boston. Louis read the article to the end and then tore it out of the paper. Sam Beaver ought to know about this, he thought. From the writing desk in his room, Louis took a pen and a sheet of letter paper. This is what he wrote. Dear Sam, I am spending the night at the Ritz in fashionable surroundings. You were right about Boston. It is very pleasant. I was able to find work as soon as I arrived. I am associated with the Swan boat at a salary of $100 a week. You may be interested in the enclosed clipping from today's paper. If all goes well, I'll soon have enough money to pay my father's debt to the music store, and then I will own the trumpet free and clear, and will hope that by blowing it passionately, I will be able to make a favorable impression on the young female I am in love with. Then everybody will be happy. My father's honor will be restored, the music shop in Billings will be repaid, and I can take a wife. I hope you are well. I miss you. A hotel room, even though it has every convenience, can be a lonely place. Your friend, Louis. Louis addressed an envelope to Sam, folded the letter, fitted the newspaper clipping in, and found a 6-cent stamp in his money bag. He sealed the envelope, pasted the stamp on, and dropped the letter in a mail chute outside the door of his room. Now I'll go to sleep, he thought. He went into the bathroom, used the toilet, then drew a full tub of cold water in the bathtub. He couldn't get Serena out of his mind. How wonderful it would be if only she were here. Before settling down for the night, he picked up his trumpet and played the song he had composed for her when he was in Ontario. Oh, ever in the greening spring, by bank and bough retiring, for love shall I be sorrowing, and swans of my desiring. He tried to play softly, but in a minute the phone rang in his room. Louis lifted the receiver and put it to his ear. I'm sorry, sir, a voice said, but I'll have to ask you not to make so much noise. The Ritz does not allow its guests to play brass instruments in the bedrooms. Louis hung up the phone and put his trumpet away. Then he turned out the lights, climbed into the tub, curved his long neck around to the right, rested his head on his back, tucked his bill under his wing, and lay there, floating on the water, his head cradled softly in his feathers. Soon he was asleep, dreaming of little lakes in the north in the springtime, dreaming of Serena, his true love. Chapter 16. Philadelphia. Louis worked all the last week of September for the Swan boat man in the Boston Public Garden. He was a great success and was becoming famous. On Saturday, the boatman paid him $100 in cash, which Lewis placed carefully in his money bag. The boatman, after paying the first night's bill at the Ritz-Carlton hotel, decided to let Lewis sleep on the lake instead of in the hotel, and this suited Lewis better. He slept with the ducks and geese on the lake, floating gracefully on the surface of the water, his head tucked under his wing. Lewis took good care of his trumpet. He kept it polished, and once a week he cleaned the spit out of it. He learned new songs whenever he could by listening to people's radios and by attending concerts. He was very good at remembering music he had heard. He was really a natural-born musician, or in his case, a natural-hatched musician. One song he liked was Beautiful Dreamer, Wake Unto Me. Whenever he played it, he thought of Serena, and always when he finished it, the passengers on the Swan boat clapped loudly and cheered. Lewis liked applause. It made him feel light-hearted and gay. Sometimes at the end of the afternoon, Lewis played Now the Day is Over. He made it sound sweet and sad. One afternoon, when he was leading the last trip of the day, he played the Cradle Song by Brahms. The passengers sang the words, Lullaby and good night with roses bedight. With roses bedight? Guess I don't know that song. A boy in the front seat of the boat pulled an air rifle from under his jacket and began shooting BB shots at Lewis's trumpet. Whenever a shot hit the horn, it made a pinging sound, so the cradle song sounded something like this. Lullaby, ping, and good night, ping, with roses bedight, ping. The children on the boat roared with laughter when they heard this, but the grown-up passengers were angry. One of them seized the boy's rifle. Another went home that night and wrote a letter to the Boston Globe urging a stronger gun control law. On some afternoons at the end of the day, people gathered on the shores of the lake to listen, while Lewis played taps. It was a peaceful scene, a memorable hour. The Swan boat had never enjoyed such popularity or made such a lot of money for the owner, but Lewis knew that the boats would not run all winter. In a few days, the boats would be hauled out for the season to wait quietly for the arrival of spring. One day, when Lewis was waiting for the boat to take its passengers aboard, a Western Union messenger boy appeared on a bicycle. "I have a telegram for the Swan," he said. The boatman seemed surprised, but he took the telegram and handed it to Lewis, who opened it promptly. It was from a man in Philadelphia. The message said, "Can offer you $500 a week for nightclub spot. 10-week engagement. Please reply." Signed, Abe Lucky Lucas, Hotel Nemo. Lewis did some quick figuring. $500 a week for 10 weeks, that was $5,000. $5,000 would easily pay his father's debt to the music store. He took his slate and wrote, "Offer accepted. Arrive tomorrow. Meet me at Bird Lake in the zoo. Splashdown will be at 4:52 p.m. Hope this will be a convenient time for you." Lewis showed the message to the Western Union boy, who copied it on a telegraph blank. "Send it collect," wrote Lewis. The messenger nodded and rowed away. Lewis stepped back into the water, the boat's lines were cast off, and Lewis led the way. He knew it was his last appearance with the Swan boat, and he felt a little sad. It was a warm, quiet Sunday afternoon, the last Sunday in September. Lewis played all his favorite tunes, Lazy River, Beautiful Dreamer, Oh, Ever in the Greening Spring, Now the Day is Over, and then as the boat neared the dock, he raised his trumpet and blew taps. The last note echoed from the walls of the Ritz and lingered over the public garden. It was a sad farewell. For the people of Boston, it meant the end of summer. For the boatman, it meant the end of the best week of business he ever had. For Lewis, It meant the end of another chapter in his adventurous life out in the big world, trying to earn enough money to get his father and himself out of trouble. Louis slept peacefully that night, being very careful that his money bag was safe. Next day he flew to Philadelphia to keep his appointment with Mr. Lucas, the man who had sent the telegram. Louis had no trouble finding Philadelphia. Almost anybody can find Philadelphia who tries. Louis simply rose into the air with all his things around his neck, and when he was about 1,000 feet high, he followed the railroad tracks to Providence, New London, New Haven, Bridgeport, Stamford, Coscob, Greenwich, Portchester, Rye, Mamaroneck, New Rochelle, Pelham, Mount Vernon, and the Bronx. When he saw the Empire State Building, he veered off to the right, crossed the Hudson River, and followed the railroad tracks to Newark and Trenton and points south. At 4:30, he reached the Schuylkill River. Doubt I'm saying that right. Just beyond, he spied the Philadelphia Zoo. Bird Lake looked very attractive from the air. It was crowded with waterfowl of all kinds, ducks and geese mostly. Louis thought he also saw 2 or 3 swans. He circled, picked an open spot, and exactly at 4:52 he splashed down. His trumpet banged against his slate knocked against his metal rapped against his chalk pencil, and his chalk pencil on its string wound itself around his money bag. All in all, the splashdown caused quite a commotion. The ducks and geese were not expecting anything like this to happen. A big white trumpeter swan dropping down out of the sky, loaded with personal possessions. Louis paid no attention to the other birds. He had a date to keep. He saw a man leaning on the wide railing in front of the birdhouse. The man was dressed in a purple suit and wore a Tyrolean hat. His face looked shrewd and wise, as though he knew a great many things, many of them not worth knowing. That must be Abe Lucky Lucas, thought Louis. He swam quickly over. "Kahoo!" he said through his trumpet. "My pleasure," replied Mr. Lucas. "You are right on time. The splashdown was sensational. Welcome to the Philadelphia Zoo, which crawls with rare mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, and fishes, including sharks, rays, and other fish-like vertebrates. Watch out for wild animals. This place is replete with them. Snakes, zebras, monkeys, elephants, lions, tigers, wolves, foxes, bears, hippos, rhinos, woodchucks, skunks, hawks, and owls. I seldom come here. My work confines me to the throbbing heart of the city, among the money changers. I am under great pressure from my work. How was your trip from Boston?" "Smooth," wrote Louis on his slate. "I make good time. What about my job?" "A happy question," replied Mr. Lucas. "The job will start on October 15th. The contract has been finalized. Your place of employment is a nightclub of great renown across the river, a place of high fashion and low prices, a jumpy joint. You will be called upon to make appearances each evening except Sunday, and play your trumpet for the happy customers. Once in a while you can join a jazz group. Louis the Swan on trumpet. The pay is very good. My spirits are lifted by thinking about the pay. Wealth and happiness are around the corner for Louis the Swan and Lucky Lucas, the great of heart. My agent's fee is 10%, a mere bagatelle." "How do I get to the nightclub?" asked Louis, who only understood about half of what Mr. Lucas was saying. "In a taxicab," replied Mr. Lucas. "Be at the north entrance of the zoo, Girard Avenue and 34th Street, at 9 o'clock on the evening of October 15th, a night that will live in memory. A cab will await your pleasure and will transport you to the club. The driver is a friend of mine. He, too, is under pressure from his work." "Who's going to pay for the cab?" asked Louis on his slate. "I am," replied Mr. Lucas. Lucky Lucas, the generous of heart, pays for the cab for Louis the Swan. And by the way, I see that you are wearing a money bag and that it is plump with moolah. I suggest, from the kindness of my great heart, that you turn this money bag over to me for safekeeping during your stay in Philadelphia, a place of many thieves and pickpockets. "No, thank you," wrote Louis. "We'll keep money bag myself." "Very well," said Mr. Lucas. "And now there is one other small matter I must bring to your attention. Most of the birds that swim on this luxury lagoon have undergone surgery. Candor compels me to tell you that the tip of one wing is usually removed by the management, a painless operation, popular with zoos the world over. Pinioned is the word for it, I believe. It detains the water bird and prevents him from leaving the narrow confines of this public park and rising into the air, because when one wing is shorter than the other, the balance of the bird is upset. His attempt to take off would be crowned with failure. In short, he can't fly. Sensing in advance the revulsion you would feel toward having the tip of one of your powerful wings removed, I approached the man in charge of birds and laid before him a proposition. He has agreed not to clip your wing. It is arranged. He is a man of honor. Your freedom of movement is assured. You will not be pinioned. But in return for this so great favor on the part of the management of the Philadelphia Zoo, you are to give a free concert here at the lake every Sunday afternoon for the people of Philadelphia, the peasantry who come here to refresh themselves. Is it a deal?" "Yes," wrote Louis. "We'll give Sunday concert." "Good," said Mr. Lucas. "Farewell for the nonce. Be at the north entrance at 9, October 15. A cab will await you. Play well, sweet Swan. You will be the finest thing that has happened to Philadelphia since the Constitutional Convention of 1787. Louis didn't understand this, but he nodded goodbye to Mr. Lucas and swam off toward the island in the center of the lake. There he stepped ashore, straightened his things, preened his feathers, and rested. He was not sure he was going to like his new job. He was not sure he liked Mr. Lucas. But he needed money badly, and when you need money, you're willing to put up with difficulties and uncertainties. One good thing about the whole business was the zoo itself. It seemed like an extremely nice place in spite of what he had heard about having your wing clipped. Louis had no intention of having a wing clipped. "I'll sock anybody who tries that on me," he said to himself. He was pleased to see so many other water birds. There were many kinds of ducks and geese. In the distance he saw 3 trumpeter swans. They were old residents of the lake. Their names were Curiosity, Felicity, and Apathy. Louis decided he would wait a day or two before making their acquaintance. Bird Lake has a fence around it. When the night came for him to start work, Louis polished his trumpet, put on all his things, flew over the fence, and landed at the north entrance. He was there promptly at 9. The taxicab was there waiting, just as Mr. Lucas had promised. Louis got in and was driven away to his new job. Let's see, I might read one more, depending how long it is. Okay, I'll read one more. Chapter 17, Serena. During the next 10 weeks, Louis got rich. He went every evening except Sundays to the nightclub and played his trumpet for the customers. He did not like the job at all. The place was big and crowded and noisy. Everyone seemed to be talking too loudly, eating too much, and drinking too much. Most birds like to go to sleep at sundown. They do not want to stay up half the night entertaining people. But Louis was a musician, and musicians can't choose their working hours. They must work when their employer wants them to. Every Saturday night, Louis collected his pay, $500. Mr. Lucas was always on hand to receive his agent's fee of 10% from Louis. After Louis had paid Mr. Lucas, he still had $450 left, and he would put this in his money bag, hop into the waiting taxicab, and return to Bird Lake, arriving at around 3 a.m. His money bag grew so stuffed with money, Lewis was beginning to worry. On Sunday afternoons, if the weather was good, crowds of people would gather on the shores of Bird Lake, and Lewis would stand on the island in the middle of the lake and give a concert. This became a popular event in Philadelphia, where there isn't much going on Sunday. Lewis took the concert very seriously. By playing for the people, he was earning the right to remain free and not have a wing clipped. He was always at his best on Sundays. Instead of playing jazz and rock and folk and country and western, he would play selections from the works of the great composers: Ludwig van Beethoven, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, and Johann Sebastian Bach, music he had learned by listening to records at Camp Kookooskoos. Lewis always liked the music of George Gershwin and Stephen Foster. When he played Summertime from Porgy and Bess, the people of Philadelphia felt that it was the most thrilling music they had ever heard. Lewis was considered so good on the trumpet, he was invited to make a guest appearance with the Philadelphia Symphony Orchestra. One day, about a week before Christmas, a great storm came up. The sky grew dark. The wind blew a howling gale. It made a whining noise. Windows rattled. Shutters came off their hinges. Old newspapers and candy wrappers were picked up by the wind and scattered like confetti. Many of the creatures in the zoo became restless and uneasy. Over in the elephant house, the elephants trumpeted in alarm. Lions roared and paced back and forth. The great black cockatoo screamed. Keepers rushed here and there, shutting doors and windows and making everything secure against the awful force of the gale. The waters of Bird Lake were ruffled by the strong, mighty wind, and for a while the lake looked like a small ocean. Many of the water birds sought protection on the island. Lewis rode out the gale on the lake. In the lee of the island, he faced the wind and kept paddling with his feet, his eyes bright with wonder at the strength of the blast. Suddenly he saw an object in the sky. It was coming down out of the clouds. At first he couldn't make out what it was. Maybe it's a flying saucer, he thought. Then he realized that it was a large white bird, struggling desperately to come in against the wind. Its wings were beating rapidly. In a moment it splashed down and flopped ashore, where it lay sprawled out, almost as if it were dead. Lewis stared and stared and stared. Then he looked again. It looks like a swan, he thought. It was a swan. It looks like a trumpeter swan, he thought. It was a trumpeter swan. My goodness, said Lewis to himself, it looks like Serena. It is Serena. She's here at last. My prayers have been answered. Lewis was right. Serena, the swan of his desiring, had been caught by the fierce storm and blown all the way across America. When she looked down and saw Bird Lake, she ended her flight, almost dead from exhaustion. Lewis was tempted to rush right over, but then he thought, no, that would be a mistake. She is in no condition at the moment to perceive the depth of my affection and the extent of my love. She is too pooped. I will wait. I will bide my time. I will give her a chance to recover. Then I will renew our acquaintance and make myself known. Lewis did not go to his job that night. The weather was too bad. All night he stayed awake, keeping watch, at a slight distance from his beloved. When morning came, the wind subsided. The skies cleared. The lake grew calm. The storm was over. Serena stirred and woke. She was still exhausted and very mussy. Lewis stayed away from her. I'll just wait, he thought. When in love, one must take risks, but I'm not going to risk everything with a bird who is too tired to see straight. I won't hurry, and I won't worry. Back home on Upper Red Rock Lake, I was without a voice. She ignored me because I could not tell her of my love. Now, thanks to my brave father, I have my trumpet. Through the power of music, I will impress her with the intensity of my desire and the strength of my devotion. She will hear me say, "Coho." I tell her I love her in a language anybody can understand, the language of music. She will hear the trumpet of the swan, and she will be mine. At least, I hope she will. Usually, if a strange bird appeared on Bird Lake, one of the keepers would report its arrival to the head man in charge of birds, whose office was in the birdhouse. The head man would then give the order to have the new bird pinioned, have one of its wings clipped. But today, the keeper who usually tended the waterfowl was sick with the flu and had not come to work. Nobody noticed that a new trumpeter swan had arrived. Serena was being very quiet anyway. She was not attracting any attention. There were now 5 trumpeters on the lake. There were the original 3 captive swans, Curiosity, Felicity, and Apathy. There was, of course, Louis, and now there was the new arrival, Serena, still exhausted, but beginning to revive. Toward the end of the afternoon, Serena roused herself, looked at her surroundings, had a bite to eat, took a bath, then walked out of the water and stood for a long while, preening her feathers. She felt distinctly better, and when her feathers were all smoothed out, she looked extremely beautiful, stately, serene, graceful, and very feminine. Louis trembled when he saw how truly lovely she was. He was again tempted to swim over and say "Coho" and see if she remembered him. But he had a better idea. There is no hurry, he thought. She's not going to leave Philadelphia tonight. I will go to my job, and when I get back from work, I shall abide near her all through the night. Just at daylight, I'll awaken her with a song of love and desire. She will be drowsy. The sound of my trumpet will enter her sleepy brain and overcome her with emotion. My trumpet will be the first sound she hears. I will be irresistible. I will be the first thing she sees when she opens her eyes, and she will love me from that moment on. Louis was well satisfied with his plan and began to make preparations. He swam ashore, removed his things, hid them under a bush, then returned to the water, where he fed and bathed. Then he fixed his feathers carefully. He wanted to look his best next morning when the meeting was to take place. He drifted around for a while, thinking of all the songs he liked and trying to decide which one to play to wake Serena in the morning. He finally decided to play "Beautiful Dreamer, Wake Unto Me." He had always loved that song. It was sad and sweet. She will be a beautiful dreamer, thought Louis, and she will wake unto me. The song fits the situation perfectly. He was determined to play the song better than he had ever played it before. It was one of his best numbers. He really knew how to play it awfully well. Once, when he played it at one of his Sunday concerts, a music critic from a Philadelphia newspaper heard him, and next morning the paper said, "Some of his notes are like jewels held up to the light. The emotion he transmits is clean and pure and sustained." Louis had memorized that statement. He was proud of it. Now he was anxious for morning to come, but he still had his job at the nightclub to go to. He knew the night would be long and that he wouldn't be able to sleep. Louis swam ashore to pick up his things. When he looked under the bush, he received a terrible jolt. His medal was there. His slate and chalk pencil was there. His money bag was there. But where was the trumpet? His trumpet was gone. Poor Louis! His heart almost stopped. "Oh, no," he said to himself. "Oh, no! Without his trumpet, his whole life would be ruined. All his plans for the future would collapse." He was frantic with anger and fear and dismay. He dashed back into the water and looked up and down the lake. Far off, he saw a small wood duck that seemed to have something shiny in its mouth. It was the trumpet, all right. The duck was trying to play it. Louis was furious. He skimmed down the lake, going even faster than he had on the day he had saved Applegate from drowning. He swam straight for the duck, knocked him on the head with a swift blow from his wing, and grabbed the precious trumpet. The duck fainted. Louis wiped the horn, blew the spit out of it, and hung it around his neck where it belonged. Now he was ready. Let the night come. Let the hours pass. Let morning come when my beautiful dreamer wakes unto me. Night came at last. 9 o'clock came. Louis went off to work, riding in the cab. The zoo quieted down. The visitors had all gone home. Many of the animals slept or snoozed. A few of them, the great cats, the raccoon, the armadillo, the ones that enjoy the night time, prowled and became restless. Bird Lake was clothed in darkness. Most of the waterfowl tucked their heads under their wings and slept. At one end of the lake, the 3 captive swans, Curiosity, Felicity, and Apathy, were already asleep. Near the island, Serena, the beautiful Serena, was fast asleep and dreaming. Her long white neck was folded neatly back. Her head rested on soft feathers. Louis got home from work at 2 a.m. He flew in over the low fence and splashed down near Serena, making as little noise as possible. He did not try to sleep. The night was fair and crisp, as nights often are just before Christmas. Clouds drifted across the sky in endless procession, partially hiding the stars. Louis watched the clouds, watched Serena as she slept, and waited for day to come, hour after hour after hour. At last, a faint light showed in the east. Soon, creatures would be stirring. Morning would be here. This is my moment, thought Louis. The time has come for me to waken my true love. He placed himself directly in front of Serena. Then he raised the trumpet to his mouth. He tilted his head. The horn pointed slightly upward toward the sky, where the first light was showing. He began his song. Beautiful dreamer, he played, wake unto me. The first 3 or 4 notes were played softly. Then as the song progressed, the sound increased. The light in the sky grew brighter. Beautiful dreamer, wake unto me. Starlight and dewdrops are waiting for thee. Each note was like a jewel held to the light. The sound of Louis's trumpet had never before been heard at this early dawn hour in the zoo, and the sound seemed to fill the whole world of buildings and animals and trees and shrubs and paths and dens and cages. Sleepy bears dozing in their grotto pricked up their ears. Foxes hiding in their dens listened to the sweet and dreamy sound of the horn blown at the coming of light. In the lion house, the great cats heard. In the monkey house, the old baboon listened in wonder to the song. Beautiful dreamer, wake unto me. The hippo heard, and the seal in his tank. The gray wolf heard, and the yak in his cage. The badger, the coon, the ring-tailed coati, the skunk, the weasel, the otter, the llama, the dromedary, the white-tailed deer, all heard, listened, pricked up their ears at the song. The kudu heard, and the rabbit, the beaver heard, and the snake, who has no ears. The wallaby, the possum, the anteater, the armadillo, the peafowl, the pigeon, the bowerbird, the cockatoo, the flamingo. All heard. All were aware that something out of the ordinary was happening. Philadelphians waking from sleep in bedrooms where the windows were open heard the trumpet. Not one person who heard the song realized that this was the moment of triumph for a young swan who had a speech defect and had conquered it. Louis was not thinking about his large, unseen audience of animals and people. His mind was not on bears and buffaloes and cassowaries and lizards and hawks and owls and people in bedrooms. His mind was on Serena, the swan of his choice, the beautiful dreamer. He played for her and for her alone. At the first note from his trumpet, she woke. She raised her head, and her neck straightened until her head was held high. What she saw filled her with astonishment. She gazed straight at Louis. At first she could hardly remember where she was. Directly in front of her she saw a handsome young male swan, a cob of noble proportions. Held against his mouth was a strange instrument, something she had never seen before, and from this strange instrument came sounds that made her tremble with joy and with love. As the song went on, as the light grew stronger, she fell hopelessly in love with this bold trumpeter who had awakened her from her dreams. The dreams of night were gone. New dreams of day were upon her. She knew that she was full of sensations she had never had before, feelings of delight and ecstasy and wonder. She had never seen a finer-looking young cob. She had certainly never seen any swan with so many personal possessions around his neck, and she had never been so thrilled by a sound before in her whole life. Oh, she thought, oh, 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 oh. The song ended. Louis lowered his trumpet and bowed solemnly to Serena. Then he raised his horn again. "Caho," he said. "Caho," replied Serena. "Caho, caho," said Louis through his trumpet. "Caho, caho," replied Serena. Each felt drawn to the other by a mysterious bond of affection. Louis swam once rapidly around Serena. Then Serena swam once rapidly around Louis. This seemed to amuse them. Louis dipped his neck and pumped it back and forth. Serena dipped her neck and pumped it back and forth. Louis splashed a little water into the air. Serena splashed a little water into the air. It was like a game. It was love at long last for Louis. It was love at first sight for Serena. Then Louis decided to show off. "I'll play her my own composition," he thought, "the one I made up for her last summer at camp." Again he raised his trumpet. "Oh, ever in the greening spring, by bank and bough retiring, for love shall I be sorrowing, and swans of my desiring." The notes were clear and pure. They filled the zoo with beauty. If Serena had been in any doubt before, she no longer was. She succumbed completely to this charmer, this handsome musician, this rich and talented cob. Louis knew that his plan had succeeded. His beautiful dreamer had waked, and she had waked unto him. Never again would they be parted. All the rest of their lives they would be together. Thoughts of small quiet lakes in the woods, where canebrakes grew and blackbirds sang, filled Louis's mind. Thoughts of springtime and nesting and little cygnets. Oh, ever in the greening spring. Louis had been told once by his father what happened to deep-sea divers when they go far, far down into the ocean. At great depths, where the pressure is great and the watery world is strange and mysterious, divers sometimes experience what they call the rapture of the deep. They feel so completely peaceful and enchanted they never want to return to the surface. Louis's father had warned him about this. "Always remember, when you dive deep," he had said, "that this feeling of rapture can lead you to your death. No matter how wonderful you feel down there, don't ever forget to return to the surface, where you can breathe again." Looking at Serena, Louis thought to himself, "I think love is like the rapture of the deep. I feel so good I just want to stay right where I am. I'm experiencing rapture of the deep even though I'm right on top of the water. I have never felt so good, so peaceful, so excited, so happy, so ambitious, so desirous. If love is like this on a cold day in December in the Philadelphia Zoo, imagine what it's going to be like in spring on a remote lake in Canada." These were Louis's secret thoughts. He was the happiest bird alive. He was a real trumpeter swan at last. His defect of being without a voice had at last been overcome. He felt very grateful to his father. Cautiously, he placed his head across Serena's long, beautiful white neck. It seemed a very daring thing to do, but she seemed to like it. Then he backed away. Serena swam toward him. Cautiously, she placed her head across his neck. It rested there for a moment. Then she swam away. "What a daring thing," she thought. "But he seems to like it. How pleasing to know that I have found an acceptable mate, a cob I can love and respect, a cob that appears to be not only musical but also quite wealthy. Look at all those things," said Serena to herself. Her eyes feasted on the trumpet, the slate, the chalk pencil, the money bag, the life-saving medal. "What a gay cob," she thought. "What a dressy fellow." They swam off together toward the other end of the lake, where they could be alone. Then Louis, who was short on sleep, dozed off, while Serena ate her breakfast and fixed herself up. Until next time.